Going to be able to make it. We've got David Gersman here, so he's recording the meeting. Was Dick going to call in right at 9? Or?
I believe so. I gave him the time. I gave him the contact stuff.
Okay, right.
And he thought he could be available.
Okay. Well, let's maybe give Doug one more minute here.
Okay.
Oh, maybe that's him. Hello?
Dick Hay.
Oh, hi, Dick.
Hi, Mr. Hay. This is Jennifer.
Good morning. Good morning, Dick. The sun is shining nicely here in Topeka. Yes, it is, if you're in Topeka. Yes, I am. Having Kansas Hospital Association meetings in a little bit, so yes, I'm here.
Well, I think... oh, go ahead.
I was just telling Steve I can look out my window and see where he is.
Oh.
See the roof anyway. There you go. There you go. It's not far. When you're headquartered in downtown Topeka, it's easy to see where everybody is. Yeah. Well, Dick, as Kelly was just saying, I think we're waiting on one more call, but wanted to let you know this call is being recorded. So we have a member of the public here who's making a recording of the call that will be posted to social media later today. So just to give you a heads up on that.
And just to let everyone know, this is Jennifer. I have court this morning, so I need to leave at 9:30. So I'll have about 30 minutes here, if that's a problem for anyone.
Okay. No, that works for me. I have to travel a bit to the meeting I'm going to, so 9:30 is kind of my cutoff time as well.
Okay.
Well, I think we should just go ahead and get started then. And Doug, we'll just need to catch up if he calls in. So, Jennifer, do you want to start, or how do you
well, I had contacted Mr. Hay, obviously, and provided him back, the copies that the commissioners had signed. We had touched around the last meeting, putting forward an NDA and dealing with that. I felt like it might be helpful for Mr. Hay to kind of to explain to us what that is and what importance that is and why he would like to pursue that. And in my brief conversation with him, I think trying to figure out what his duties are and what we want him to do was a concern. And so I felt like that maybe could be some discussion as I noted to him, what the situation is, with KDADs and trying to figure out the licensure seems to be a point of interest for everyone involved. And also just trying to kind of get a forum or how we're going to kind of do this so Mr. Hay is satisfied that we're reacting the way that he would like us to do or in a timely manner with him. So I invited him to be on the call today so he could kind of help us a little bit with that. But if anybody else has any concerns or questions or thoughts, please feel free to jump in. So I guess, Mr. Hay, it's you.
To start, so yeah, let's talk about the non-disclosure agreement. Okay, well, first let me preface what I'm going to say with another comment, and that is that the Board of County Commissioners owns what's known as attorney-client privilege. It is not in my purview to waive that privilege. It is up to them. And I understand that you are kind of an appointed arm of the Board of County Commissioners. But nonetheless, unless and until they tell me specifically to speak publicly, I'm not going to be able to say very much. And all my communications with them will need to be an executive session. As to an NDA or non-disclosure agreement, that's rather typical subject to the public view, which kind of ties into what I just said about attorney-client privilege. In this instance, it would contemplate that the owners of Lincoln Park Manor would be asked to and would disclose items related to their operations that haven't been disclosed to this point. They would be disclosed to me, and I would make them available as need be to the Board of County Commissioners. So that answers that. That's generally what that process would be. Certainly the documents that have been disclosed to this point are pretty comprehensive, have a lot of information in them, but not everything. There is more that needs to be identified. So that's generally what that would involve. Hopefully that speaks to that question.
This is Alexis, and I'm on the commission. My question is, what documents are we going to actually ask for? Because there have been some instances where Mr. Graves has provided documentation from Lincoln Park Manor. But just as
I don't have that list. I don't have that list right now.
Well, and I'm not saying what has been versus what will be. I guess I'm just trying to clarify. You or I could very well create a spreadsheet for any particular business. Are we asking for qualified audited financials? Are we asking for tax returns? Are we asking for that kind of thing? Or are we just asking them to create a ledger of some sort for us to look at?
As I said, I don't have a list yet, but it would not be asking them to create documents. It would be asking them for information that they should have.
Okay.
Mr. Hay, this is Jennifer, and I just wanted to clarify, just so we're all, I know that you briefly touched on the attorney-client privilege, but if we needed to move forward, are you available on like Tuesday morning to have a conference call with myself and the commissioners to kind of figure out exactly those purviews?
Let's see, that's 13. Yeah.
Oh, they canceled Tuesday? Oh, okay. Sorry.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, usually in all other matters that I've dealt with where there's been negotiations, including hospital boards that are public, at least public hospital boards, they go into executive session to meet and talk with counsel. That's just kind of the standard operating procedure. And if you all want to do it differently, that's fine. But somebody needs to figure that out. It's not really, I don't think, my bailiwick to get into those sorts of issues. I'm more focused just on what you want to accomplish, which is operate this nursing home for the future.
So if there's tasks that need to be assigned to you, do you want those to be first vetted by the Board of County Commissioners and then sent to you through me for those tasks or those issues?
Say that again. I don't know if
I'm sorry.
I didn't hear the first little part that you said. Maybe.
Well, and my question is more procedural than anything. If there are specific tasks that say the committee is interested or information the committee wants, do you want me to vet those questions through the Board of County Commissioners, probably an executive session with you, and then that information go to you, and then you complete those tasks? I know that this is a different situation because we have this kind of executive committee that's off of the commissioners to try to fact find and to try to work on this in a more timely manner, as this is a pressing issue. I just want to know procedurally how you want us to do it.
Well, that's preferable, but I'm not going to tell you that you have to do it in any particular way. I mean, I'm the lawyer, you all are the client, and by you all, I mean ultimately the Board of County Commissioners. So what you all decide as to how you want to proceed, I'm probably going to be fine with. Just keep in mind, though, that the attorney-client privilege is something that's generally worth preserving, and in particular, I think it's appropriate in a business negotiation in which there are strategies that are usually developed and discussed and not necessarily made known to the other side.
that's one of our original questions. As far as the business negotiation goes, all of us are ignorant to the process of obtaining a license, regardless of purpose of the actual business itself.
Well, the license, I mean, there is an application that has to be filed, and there are requirements in state regulations that have to be met, one of which is you're going to have operating funds on hand. But there's a process known as change of ownership of license, and it's spelled out in the regulations. The form that you file either asks you to check the box for initial application or initial license or a change of ownership. And it's fairly cut and dried. I wouldn't think you'd want to start over with this. But I suppose if we could, we'd have to talk with KDADS about what I understand to be some pretty serious code issues. But the regulations spell it out fairly clearly, and after that, it's kind of in the discretion of KDADS.
Can I, this is Kelly, can I just kind of ask a little bit more on that? Because I guess that's, the license thing is something that we keep going back to, is whether we can start over with and get our own kind of brand new license, or if we have to obtain the current license. And, I think we've got mixed messages from KDADS on that. So do you have any thoughts on that, whether we can get a new license or whether we have to?
You want to do a change of ownership. That's what you want to do.
Okay.
I don't think there's really much doubt that that's the simplest way to do it. Now, but let me tell you one other thing. That really is, to my mind, somewhat the cart before the horse. The real question is who's going to operate this thing, and what qualifications do they have, and what sort of operating structure is in place. Well, those are the questions KDADS is going to have.
I guess in my mind, what we've talked about is ultimately where we want it to go is something kind of similar to the hospital. We can't be set up like a hospital because the way I understand it, they're kind of their own unique organizational type of thing underneath the county commission. But something where it's a it's a nonprofit organization, but it's a county appointed board, so that the county commission and the taxpayer dollars that may be going into this, there is, I guess, the ability to have the public and the community have some sort of input.
And that's fine, but ultimately you have to have a licensed administrator and you have to have staff.
Yes.
And so, that's really the question, is where is all that going to come from? Who's going to do it? I assume the existing staff is going to transition, or that would be the plan. But you have to have an HR person that can handle that. And then there's going to have to be an administrator, which may be, I suppose, the same person, but that would be quite a bit to bite off. But somebody's going to have to run this thing as the administrator.
Yes.
So do you suggest that we look into creating a general RFP to solicit interest?
Not necessarily. I mean, there are companies out there. That's one way it's been done. And that's probably a discussion to have with KDADS, which is what I'm going to try to set up.
So who is our contact person at this point from KDADS?
I don't know that I have one, but I will have by the first part of next week.
There's probably a lot of turnover at the higher levels at KDADS here, so...
yeah, that's a point that ought to be mentioned.
Some of this is going to be chaotic for a while with KDADS, KDHE, and things of that nature with the recent election.
Right.
But I do know this is Steve Granville, I do know in my conversations with Eric Otting and several other people here in Kansas, there are a couple of different very reputable nursing care facility management companies that we can approach and talk to and interview that are here
I guess if I had one question, Dick, it's for KDAD, where it seems like we've been getting conflicting information, and it's crucial, is that if we go for a new license, a change of ownership, does the building have to meet current code? And that's the issue that we can't seem to get a definitive answer to.
Change of ownership, no.
Okay.
Now they may, they have done surveys. They may say you need to upgrade stuff. I mean, you may need to do things. I mean, they have some discretion, but in terms of what amount to almost a complete teardown from reading that engineering report, no, I don't think that would be on the agenda.
Well, if that's true, that solves an enormous problem, because then we've removed the real huge bargaining chip, from Grace. So that in my mind, that's the most crucial point to allow us to move forward.
Well, there'll be a discussion of KDAD sometime, I hope, next week, on all those Steve's points well taken. And I do not know. Now, I do know the secretary. He's right across the street from me. But I don't know how long he's going to be there. So I just don't know how that's going to play out. That's going to be something that you just kind of have to take the temperature on and see where the various people that have authority in this are going to be, whether they're going to stay there, whether they're going to be out the door and win, and all those sorts of kind of tangential issues.
Additionally, what we had been given conflicted information about is, are the Medicaid payment agreements directly attached to the existing facility license that's issued through the state?
There's a chow for that too, and Medicare and all that. There's a question as to whether you want to do that on Medicare, but yeah, there's a chow for that too. But that's a big project, actually. It takes a lot of information.
So what you're saying is there are two separate change of ownership, and potentially three, if there's one for Medicaid versus Medicare, but you're saying the facility license is not necessarily attached to the payment agreements that come with.
Right. That's correct. That's correct. They're different. And of course, and each payment agreement on top of that is different. Medicare's one agency, Medicaid's another, KDAD's. And then I don't know if you probably, nursing home, I don't know. You might have some sort of managed care agreement with somebody. I don't know who it would be. But, you've got multiple entities to deal with is the answer to your question.
Okay. And so what I was told from staff at KDAD is if we were to do the change of ownership for Medicaid and Medicare payment agreements, if we ask for an initial application to establish those payment agreements, we would have to have a zero deficiency inspection. Is that something that you're knowledgeable about?
That's probably correct. I've got a partner that's the chow expert who I call with those questions, but and she would be the person that's going to complete all this stuff. So at least with regard to Medicare and Medicaid, I would suspect that's correct. Although, this facility does have one of those this year, I believe. So zero deficiency. Looked to me like, at least on a revisit. So they're not that far off the mark.
And so then I guess one more question I had. We have retained Eric Otting and his firm as auditors. Are we going to instruct an audit?
I guess that's your choice. Unless somebody says they need it, I don't need it.
So how do we project any operating expenses or operating detail for our future progression without knowing what the actual situation has been?
I'd have to lateral that question to Eric. And whether he has confidence in the documents and the data that he has or we can get. I don't know what he'd say about that.
really, unfortunately, is not going to tell you much because you're not assuming any of the ways they do things, and it's relatively easy to put together a pro forma operating budget of what it should look like. All you really need is the census and the rates, and you can do that. I mean, that's not a complicated process, and his numbers, frankly, aren't worth probably the paper they're printed on. So.
Well, I agree with the latter part of that statement, except we've already received an opinion from Mr. Otting that, according to the numbers that are there, the hospital would be unable to facilitate any of the operation. But what you're saying is that's based on nothing at all. So, because you're not...
No, I don't think that's correct, Alexis. That's like trying to compare apples and oranges. It's different in
what you said was you're taking into account how it has been operated in the past. And really what you should be looking at is the projected future possibilities of how that could be manipulated into a more efficient way.
Well, yes, but the whole thing with the hospital is that it would cost us, if we were as the letter says, if the hospital were to take over operation of the nursing home, it would cost us at least $386,000 in Medicare reimbursement overall. In other words, we would be even further in the hole than we already are. And that's assuming that we can operate, the hospital can operate the nursing home on a break-even basis. If we can't make the hospital can't make the nursing home operate on a break-even basis, then those red numbers get even deeper. And so what we have to do is, as Bob has suggested, go in and look at the census, the rates, and things of that nature, and we can start making at least a pro forma budget to operate the nursing facility independently, as we have discussed in the past.
I understand that. I'm just saying that none of those calculations took into account a decreased expense for the operation of the nursing home itself, based on change of management.
Well, yes, that is true. That's why we need to develop a pro forma as Bob has described.
So I guess my original question is, what are we going to require or ask of Mr. Otting and the auditing firm?
Well, I think I think we would kick that to Mr. Hay and go forward from there. That would be my opinion. And see what he needs and wants and what he can and cannot do.
Well, the data that's going to have to be submitted will include, or has to include, a financial statement, really a projection of operating income expenses, and then you're going to have cash behind that. So, I mean, that isn't for me to prepare. That's going to be for Eric. That's the one thing for sure he will need to be doing now.
Okay.
He's going to have some accounting expertise in looking at this, and he's going to be able to say, I would think, that there are places where expenses are too high or too low, and the various things that ought to be looked at. And that's typically what Eric says when I've worked with him. So he will bring that level of expertise. And I don't know what this Mr. Grace is going to want. I assume that Eric would also have something to contribute to that.
Hello?
Yep, we're here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of static on my end. It sounds like somebody's kind of cutting out or something.
Yes, I'm getting the same thing, so...
So, in my mind, just kind of hearing discussions, and maybe I'm just trying to simplify this too much, but there's three major areas that we have to be working on kind of in tandem. They all completely affect the other, but at the same time, there's somewhat separate activities. One is we got to do the change of ownership, the CHOW process, and the Medicaid, and all the licensing and so forth. Number two is getting this organization set up. If we're going through the 501c3, we need to get kind of the entity involved. So once there is a change of ownership, or actually we kind of have to have this entity in order to do the change of ownership. And then the third is all the financing. And I think, like you said, Dick, there's got to be capital. There's got to be a bank account with money in it in order to do the change of ownership. So is that, am I kind of, I guess, putting this into three logical buckets of what we need to be working on all kind of at the same time, the CHOW, the organizational, and the financing piece? Is that...
If you're really, I think that pretty much, I think that pretty much sums it up, yes. I think that's what Dick's been telling us here this morning.
Okay. And I guess, Dick, are you doing those three things for us then? Is that, I guess, something that the commission needs to decide?
Well, I'm your attorney. I'm not doing them for you. I mean, the operations, how this is going to operate, and who's going to do it. I mean, I'm not a broker or anything. You all are going to have to think about how you're going to do that. I mean, I can assist you, and Steve had a good point. There were several good points, but that's really a decision you all are going to have to make.
Okay, so this is Alexis again. My question would be, if we are considering the change of ownership paperwork for the facility license and each payment agreement, is there a price to be negotiated? And as far as, I'm assuming both signers or signees, however you want to describe that, whoever the signatures are on the paperwork would be the seller and the purchaser, correct?
Not necessarily. It would be the operator.
So then it's at the sole discretion of KDAD to...
No. It's on your end. Who's going to be the operator?
And by operator, you mean
the assumption that we're still talking about change of ownership with the existing licenses and payment agreements.
Right.
So is there a seller in this process, or are we just able to apply?
Oh, I see. No. I mean, we'll either have to negotiate a deal or kick him out.
Okay, that's my question.
Yeah.
And so if you were to negotiate, potentially, because that word's been used a lot prior to you being included in our conversation, if one was to negotiate a deal, how do you value the assets or the value of the business, and not necessarily the business, but the particular change of ownership item?
I don't have an opinion on that, and that really is getting close to something I probably should take up directly with, even though you're on the board of county commissioners, it ought to be probably with them as a body. And that's kind of where it also enters the picture.
Okay. No, I appreciate that.
I'm going to have to sign off now. I've got to head for my other meeting. Dick, thank you for helping us out this morning. I appreciate it. Kelly, thanks for setting up the call.
Thank you, Steve. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Are we done?
Goodbye.
Tuesday, Jennifer?
Jennifer?
What?
Tuesday?
Tuesday they don't have commission meeting. Right.
So there's no meeting next week, or?
So that would be no.
That would be no. Okay, so next Monday? Or the...
Yeah,
19th. I'll talk to Dawn and figure it out, Mr. Hay, and get in touch with you.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
I guess somebody's still there.
Is anyone else still on?
Yeah, I am. I guess I'm just kind of waiting for everybody to hang up and get my music saying that everybody's
Okay.
done.
Are we still planning on 9:30 next Friday then?
Yes, we'll change the regular meeting time to 9:30.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Got a busy day.